Well, let's talk about that video that's gone viral around the world, which shows several U.S. Marines urinating on the bodies of militants in Afghanistan. If you haven't seen it, we'll show it to you again. To be honest, folks, we thought that we had said enough about this and that today we'd move on from the story. But we've discovered there's actually an entirely other story out there. Turns out there's a massive level of support by Americans for what's happened here, what you're seeing in this video. I'm not talking about support for the troops. I'm talking about support of their actions, of urinating on dead bodies. Well, it should come as no surprise that Pamela Geller, the woman who made a name for herself speaking out loudly and vehemently against the proposal to build an Islamic center a few blocks away from where the World Trade Center attacks took place, is one of those people. Geller issued a statement and said, quote, "So, let me be perfectly clear. I do love those Marines. We are at war with an enemy that means to slaughter us and overthrow the United States of America. I don't care that these Marines wee-weed on murderous savages." And she spelled care like that as a knock on the Council on American Islamic Relations. There's another aspect of the story, though, I also want to shed some light on as well. Among those in favor of the actions by the Marines, CNN contributor Dana Loesch, who said this on her radio show.
Can someone explain to me if there's supposed to be a scandal that someone pees on the corpse of a Taliban fighter? Someone who was as part of an organization murdered over 3,000 Americans? I'd drop trial and do it too. That's me, though.
All right, so Dana Loesch has a radio show. It's her own show. She can say whatever she wants. She's also one of the co-founders of the St. Louis branch of the Tea Party. But Dana is also a paid contributor on the network that calls itself the most trusted name in news, CNN. However, in this case, at least so far, CNN appears to be defending Dana Loesch. CNN issued this statement. It says CNN contributors are commentators who express a wide range of viewpoints on and off of CNN that often provoke strong agreement or disagreement. Their viewpoints are their own. And, you know, it just seems a little strange. Are the lines blurring here? I mean, this is the network that has fired two others. Octavia Nasser, who tweeted that she was sad to hear of the passing of the Grand Ayatollah, who was affiliated with Hezbollah. And also Rick Sanchez for comments on a radio show where he called Jon Stewart a bigot. Well, joining me on the phone, I've got Rick Sanchez, journalist, author, and former CNN host. He's also the author of this book, Conventional Idiocy: Why the New America is Sick of Old Politics. Hey there, Rick. Can you hear me?
Hey, Christine, how are you doing?
Thanks for coming. Good to have you on the show again. I guess I just want to start by asking you kind of what your reaction was not just to this video, but to a CNN contributor making these comments.
Well, you know, I can't speak specifically to what she said or what she did, but let me just say on a more general basis that this one-upmanship that happens in this country with radio hosts and commentators and contributors and op-ed writers all trying to outdo each other to try and sound more nationalistic and more cavalier does a disservice first and foremost to our troops who are overseas fighting for us, including the Marines, who may be kin or peers to this triad or this group of soldiers that apparently have been accused of doing this. It's just wrong to have that attitude, because in the end, all it does is it's more apt to get other Marines killed. There's no need to add fuel to the fire. Wrong is wrong, and it doesn't matter if it's them doing it to us or us doing it to them. It's wrong.
I think it's an interesting point that you bring up. I mean, I know that when I used to work in local news, it was true when you hear the expression, when it bleeds, it leads. And so you're suggesting that a lot of these radio hosts and columnists are trying to have say the most shocking thing simply to outdo one another and to get the coverage?
And a lot of them have two things not going for them. One, they're not really journalists. In other words, they've never really practiced the craft or studied the craft in terms of understanding what it takes to be a real journalist. Or two, they don't understand what war is really about. Many of them are exactly what was described in the most recent Republican debate. I think the term that was used is chicken hawk, and it's not my term. It's a term that's been used by Republicans arguing amongst themselves. This is someone who's never been to war, never been affected by war, but they're out there willing to do everything possible to sound real tough. Well, you know what? Very rarely do you hear real legitimate military leaders or generals speaking in this way. Most of my experience with people who've been in the military, not politicians, mind you, but people who've been in the military, is that they loathe this kind of behavior, and they loathe even more people who go on the air and say such ridiculous things.
And certainly we should say, you know, on a lot of these networks, including your former employer, there have been people on that have expressed outrage, that have, you know, said such a thing. But I'm wondering, is it just because this is a CNN contributor and you were an actual host of a show that she will not be fired and you were?
Well, look, I don't know. I have absolutely nothing to do with CNN's decision making. I, to this day, do not understand why CNN decided to take me off the air. So I do not understand it. It has never made any sense to me. I went on the air and essentially said that the problem in the media today is it is not diverse enough. 20, 30 years ago, we had an Asian person on TV named Connie Chung. We had a guy named Geraldo Rivera who was in prime time. We had a guy named Bernie Shaw who was an African American. Today, you can't find anybody in American media who is a person of color or who is a person who is ethnic. That's all I said. And I didn't point the finger specifically at CNN. I pointed the finger broadly at all the media. And in the discussion, the interviewer started to become specific about other religions and other people. And I said, no, in this particular case, we're talking about Asians, African Americans, and Hispanics. Those are the ones who are underrepresented in the media. That's all I said. That's all I meant to say. Why they decided to make that decision is their decision. I respect them for it. Fine.
Were your feelings, though, a little bit hurt, Rick, that, you know, that they were so quick to defend these comments? Do you think it showed that perhaps CNN regrets the decision of letting you go, or do you think there's something else there?
I don't know. I can't get into somebody's head. Business is business. I mean, they made this decision. Perhaps it was something else. Perhaps it was a decision they made based on something other than that. All I know is while I was at CNN, I had higher ratings, much higher, in fact, than at least 60 or 70% of the shows that are on the air now, including most of their marquee shows.
Real quick, Rick, in the year or so that you've been out of the media, that you've been off CNN, any observations that you've made about the mainstream media having a little bit of space from it?
Yeah, it's completely corporatized. More often than not, you don't get real journalism. You get something that too often is filtered through executives who too often are tied to interests that have nothing to do with what is the business of news gathering.
Was that not the case, though, when you were there?
Oh, I'm not speaking specifically about CNN. I'm speaking about all of them.
Right.
By the way, it's on the left, and it's on the right, and it's in the middle as well. There's a huge problem today with journalism in the United States, broadcast journalism being the worst of all, and that is that more often than not, it's just about impact and business, and not often enough is it about information, news gathering, and real journalism.
All right. Journalist, author, and former CNN host Rick Sanchez. Really, really interesting. Thank you so much for being on the show again.
My pleasure. Thanks.